Welcome back. Earlier today, we heard from inspirational speakers about Africa's path to a circular economy, one that supports and aims for inclusivity and harnesses the unique opportunities of the continent. Now, this session will be about the role of partnerships in transitioning to a circular economy at a time of disruption. Working together is one of the core principles of the World Circular Economy Forum, and in this session we certainly will be diving deeper into this principle.
Well, with us we have today also the Federation of the States of Sao Paulo and the National Industrial Training Service Sao Paulo, and they're having a side event on circular economy in Latin America. And today we are very glad to have a large Latin American audience for this. So, bienvenidos y bienvenidos a todos. The circular economy is a team game, and diversity builds resilience. This is not just about diversification across supply chains or having many species in an ecosystem. It's as much about diversity of people and ideas. I think it's the understanding that inclusivity and co-creation and a shared sense of involvement and ownership in the process are really preconditions for effective results. And this thinking was really at the heart of Citra's work when developing the world's first national circular economy roadmap. And as an example of what's possible, that you really can change the system, already last year, 70,000 students at all levels of education had already been studying the circular economy in Finland, which also had the highest number of circular economy courses and programs in the whole world, not just per capita. And to help other governments with the roadmap process, we have just published a roadmap guidebook that you can find on our website. Do check it out. And a lot really comes from learning from others. And in the report, Green to Scale, we have, together with partners, also show that by replicating just 14 solutions from other Nordics, you can get a long way towards remaining within our planetary boundaries. I trust that we'll learn more about this today, and when we look at the role of partnerships with PACE, the platform for accelerating the circular economy.
And thank you to Tim for the country bragging about circular economy and education. I was glad that it was rather a fellow Swede than a Finn that presented that. But just to remind you about a few technical instruction, the WCEF online platform gives you access to all the relevant information regarding the program. So should you have any questions, do reach out via the chat. And I hope we still have time for the poll, and let's dive into it quickly. Once again, it is so important to hear from you, the participants, stakeholders and collaborators. So you will find the poll in the chat box and in the vote section, and just make your choice. Which partnerships are most important for accelerating a circular economy? Choose 1 to 3 most important ones. And let's see what kind of results we will be getting, Tim.
This one, I'm really curious about this one.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. Across businesses, governments, and third sectors. In a sense, it seems obvious, but
across sectors.
Yeah.
So that's more important than across countries and, yeah, especially within different sizes or different businesses. Yeah, really the sense of cutting across different sectors.
Absolutely. I mean, if we want a paradigm shift, that seems actually very sensible.
Yeah, fair.
So moving along, we will now hear a keynote speech from Janez Potočnik, who is the co-chair of the International Resource Panel, leading experts as they help countries use natural resources sustainably without compromising economic growth or human development. Prior to his current role, Janez served 2 terms as European Commissioner. It is lovely to have you with us, Janez. You are a great friend of Citra and a great friend of the WCEF. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today to shape ideas on circular economy issues that require radical new partnerships. In prior sessions, others have covered well the specific impacts and data on current issues around COVID, the economic recovery, population and consumption growth, the climate crisis, and other pressing issues in 2020. These issues are in large part a call for systemic change predate the COVID-19 pandemic, which has exhibited that our socio-economic model and our existence are seriously challenged. For the first time in human history, we face the emergence of a single, tightly coupled human socio-ecological system of planetary scope. We are more interconnected and interdependent than ever, and our individual and collective responsibility for our future has enormously increased. The Club of Rome nicely summarized this by arguing that we are moving from an empty world dominated by nature to the full world dominated by humans. In the empty world, labor and infrastructure were the limiting factors of human well-being. In the full world, the limiting factors of human well-being are the natural resources and environmental sinks. We must address the resulting social, economic and environmental imbalances. Resulting social, economic and environmental imbalances. Human capital, for example, healthy citizens, it's in many cases undervalued, and natural capital, such as healthy ecosystems, not valued at all. Since the market is the main mechanism guiding our production and consumption decisions, and price signals are as they are, we should not be surprised by these exciting existing imbalances at all. They are just the logical consequence of the market signals sent to all market players, and in a way, even a proof that markets work. In economic theory, the phenomenon is known as externalities. Costs which do exist, but which we deny, which we do not account for, and which producers and consumers do not pay for. These costs are very real, but only for those who in reality pay them. The health system, or majority of cases, the next generation, which, as you know, cannot yet complain. The core of the new partnership addressing sustainable consumption and production, circular economy, must therefore embrace a new perspective and narrative of opportunity, demonstrating a long-term strategic approach to competitiveness and peace. First, sustainable development with a focus on the urgent management of global warming and species loss must be seen as a profitable investment into long-term successful innovations instead as a cost. And second, sustainable development based on smart resource management should become the new investment and innovation paradigm that will determine businesses and countries' competitiveness. In Systemic and Club of Rome, with the partners like PACE and others, we are working on a series of recommendations forthcoming to shift the paradigm for partnering to enable necessary industry transitions, which is titled A System Change Compass Implementation of the Green Deal in Time of Recovery. It will be released in the next few days. The European Commission has shown great leadership to set the stage for these transitions by treating the economic recovery and European Green Deal as two sides of the same coin. To enable this work, we need to define basic principles that need to be socialized and eventually agreed upon. The circular principles which are necessary, such as political target matrix, producer obligations, and resource market design, depart fundamentally from orthodoxy and will derail our ambitions if not addressed. With an emerging agreement on these fundamentals, there are new orientations and economic ecosystems that will build our future industrial backbone. One of those economic systems is, of course, circular materials. We need now radical reforms on cross-sector collaboration to address circular issues like localized and distributed value chains, asset recovery systems and reverse logistics, markets for secondary materials, high-value material recycling, materials as a service models, new materials and high-performing substitutes, and additive manufacturing. As we forecast our future where these transformations are reality, the future will not stakeholders and industry interests, but by tomorrow's economic emerging champions, a new industrial landscape representing specific great jobs and build a more sustainable future. New configurations are required because as adequate scientific evidence is more or less ahead are more the challenges of cooperation and implementation. Agreements are guiding force, a North Star, if you like, with binding, not the only way to drive the change. As the world becomes more, it seems clear that no one company, industry, or country to go it alone or isolate itself from long of a changing climate or unsustainable development. If one is, the surely multilateralism will not only remain, but we need more circularity, even in a global governance, instead of owing it. To achieve this alignment, not only can be reviewed in the existing institutions, but in addition, we might that strategically monitors and potentially manages this. In short, we urgently need a transition to a sustainable. We need more creative action through collaboration, through self-interest. And if this makes sense, Guy McPherson, if you think that environment or your health, breath while counting your money. Ladies and gentlemen, together, I'm sure we can do it. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to the discussions and even more to actions which should follow. Now back to the studio.
Thank you so much, Janez, and thank you for your sharp points again. I'm afraid we lost a little bit of your voice in the end, but we did pick up some of the major points, obviously, in the beginning. And thank you for once again reminding us that natural capital has not been valued, and the kind of new market mechanisms that we would need in order for this to be a true paradigm shift. Also, you touched upon the collaboration of how to scale up. What is the best way to scale up circular solution? It is the collaboration between circular innovators and industry leaders. So thank you once again, Janez.
I think that is indeed the word here. We have to work on this together, and saying that, do reach out to others in the audience if anything catches your interest, and if you also, this whole session is about partnership, so keep that in mind for the last two sessions. We challenge you to that. At the same time, partnerships, that word has an almost paradoxical feel to it right now, with the world feeling more polarized than ever, perhaps. But at the same time, we're also more closely connected, and I think just the fact that we are going straight into people's living rooms is also an opportunity. That we're really far away. I don't think any World Circular Economy Forum has been as far away before, and at the same time, we're closer than ever. So it is really paradoxical. And I think this is also about diversity, that we need different types of partnerships, and we need many different types of partnerships. And we'll look more into that in this session. So it's about time that we dig deeper into the session held by the Platform for Accelerating the Circular Economy. And I'm really delighted to introduce the Global Director of PACE, David McGinty.
Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. And Janez, it's great to have you and IRP as part of PACE's 85+ leaders who are accelerating the adoption of the circular economy. With frontrunners like Janez and Ella MacArthur and those joining us in the event today, our teams have been working during 2020 to develop the first global circular economy call to action, which is a clear set of agreed upon priorities for circular economy action that should be taken forward by any current or emerging leader. So you can follow us at Pace Circular on Twitter, or check us out on LinkedIn to learn more as this is launched over the coming months. But today we have with us an amazing group of thought leaders and doers to discuss some of these priority actions, what they are doing, and where they need to join hands with you to realize the societal impacts we all seek. So first, we'll have a panel discussion focusing on specific actions and priorities, hosted by today's facilitator, Steve Schmida, who's the co-founder of Resonance and author of Partner with Purpose. Then after a short video, we'll look at the larger systemic issues, some of those that Janez has really presented here, and areas for global cooperation. And so as the facilitators mentioned, please do continue to interact in the chat box, and as time allows, we'll try to bring some of those comments and reflections into the discussion. So as we go, Steve, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, David. Look, as we've heard, for this circular economy to develop, it's critical for governments, NGOs, and companies to work together. And while partnership, I think we all agree it's essential, cross-sector collaboration can be really, really difficult. When I was researching my book, Partner with Purpose, I heard over and over again from leading professionals about just how difficult it is to work across public sector, private sector, and civil society. They have different cultures, different missions, different incentives. And that's why I'm so thrilled that we are having this conversation today. We are going to hear from some amazing leaders on the front lines of the circular economy about the importance of partnerships and examples of successful collaboration. And I'm honored to introduce today's panelists. First, we have Bonnie Glick. She is the Deputy Administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development. By Dimitri de Vreeze. He is the a leading company, and the CEO of the IKEA Foundation. And in the interest of time, I'd like to just dive right in. And Bonnie, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. USAID is the U.S. government's largest foreign assistance agency. Could you give us an example of where USAID is partnering to drive forward the circular economy?
Steve, thank you so much, and I'm so glad you asked that question. For us at USAID, partners are extremely important for the work that we do. USAID carries out nearly all of its work through partnerships, whether that's through our relationships with private sector partners, host country governments, or local non-government organizations. We would not be successful without them. Foreign assistance continues to go through a profound change in the way we finance it and in the way that it's delivered. All funding across all donors combined is dwarfed by the resources that come from the private sector into emerging markets. Given the increasing role of the private sector, partnerships for us are no longer an alternative way of supporting development, but a critical pathway to achieving results. So I'll share some of USAID's many examples of partnerships, particularly those that are relevant to circular economy approaches. So I'll start with a program that's committed to reducing poverty, improving food security, and empowering women. It's called the ASELI program, ASELI Africa. And I'm so glad I get to sit alongside, even if it's virtually, that I get to sit alongside Per today, because the IKEA Foundation is a co-sponsor with USAID on this one. ASELI Africa focuses on unlocking the growth of small and medium enterprises in the agriculture sector. SMEs contribute more than 60% of agriculture production and trade in Africa, but they face upwards of $65 billion in an annual investment gap. These challenges can't be addressed alone, so the ASELI approach has been designed by many partners to use evidence-based, innovative financial tools. ASELI investments are environmentally sustainable, they emphasize local production and markets, and they prioritize underserved populations. ASELI just concluded its first transaction earlier this month. It was a loan to a 50% woman-owned rice processing company in Tanzania. Reaching farmer cooperatives and SMEs in East Africa is strongly aligned to the U.S. government's Feed the Future initiative to end hunger. We're also doing a lot in the area of combating ocean plastic pollution, which is a global challenge that cannot be solved by any one entity working in isolation. Our flagship program in this area is called Clean Cities Blue Ocean, which is currently implemented in Asia and will soon expand to Latin America. This program partners with local governments, schools, community groups, companies, and the informal sector to form systems of waste management in the countries where we work. Additionally, in June of this year, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. Together, we plan to deploy innovative local technologies, infrastructure, and business models to improve waste management and recycling in cities and communities at the heart of the ocean pollution crisis. As you can see, the partnerships we forge help communities in target countries solve their own development challenges as part of what we call the journey to self-reliance. USAID knows that the private sector is the engine in driving this self-reliance and economic growth that'll bring us closer to the day when our foreign assistance is no longer necessary.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Dimitri, I'd like to turn to you. We just heard from Bonnie from the development agency perspective. Why don't you weigh in? DSM's been out on the forefront of these issues. Would love to hear about a successful collaboration in circular from DSM.
Steve, thanks very much, and hi everyone. The partnership will be the name of the game. I think we as DSM, we stand for merging people, planet, and profit interests. And by doing so, these elements are complex to approach, and therefore partnerships are absolutely needed. You can't do it all yourself. Maybe in the past, DSM of the past, we thought that we could do everything ourselves, right? I mean, we developed, we innovate, and what was coming from our lab was always the best. In today's situation, that is absolutely a recipe for disaster. You need to partner to really address the key topics in the world. And for us, there are three macro trends before coming to a specific partnership. We see trends in nutrition and health, and certainly in today's COVID-19 situation, that is a trend which is upcoming. Certain is the climate and energy transition, and we see that happening all the way. And the third element is what we call resources and circularity. Because the weird thing about our system is that waste is almost for free. If you would price waste, you go back to circularity. And if you go to circularity, you need to do it in partnership because it means across the value chain. And just to give an example, and not just by coincidence, I've picked that example because I saw that Per was on the panel. I have an example which we've done with IKEA. You may be surprised, but indeed, we did quite some work together with IKEA because IKEA has been quite a climate leader and a circular leader for the last 2 or 3 years. And there we came into play. And if you remember, perhaps in the past, IKEA had a POAM chair. It was a chair. I will not debate whether it was a nice chair or a horrible chair, but it was a chair which was made out of wood with two curves. They are used in the Netherlands by students because they are rather cheap. But the issue about this chair was that it was glued together with a phenol-based chemical glue, which made the recycling very difficult. And there we came into play, and together with IKEA and together with raw material suppliers, we've developed a bio-based recyclable glue and therefore made the Pohang chair more recyclable. We could have never done that on our own. We were developing recipes to make that work. We first started in our own lab, and we didn't came to the right glue with the right specifications because they need to glue pretty fast if it has an S-curve. And therefore we went out, we went on the internet explaining the problem we had with the IKEA issue. We couldn't solve it. And we got over 5,000 remarks, recipes for solutions from all over the globe. And one of these remarks we've got led to a fantastic bio-based glue of which we could make the Pohang chair of IKEA more recyclable. So I think an excellent example of partnership is leading to the best solution later on. Back to you, Steve.
Dimitri, no, that was a great example. Per, you seem to be in the center of this, right? With collaborating with both DSM and USAID. Would love to hear a little bit about IKEA Foundation, which is distinct from IKEA, a little bit about your approach to partnership in circularity. Oh, you're muted.
Usual problem, right? Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I have to make it clear that IKEA Foundation is a separate organization to the business. And as much as I love the fact that Dimitri mentioned the example about the chair, I can't take any credit for that. But I can take credit for working with Bonnie on Aceli. I will come back to that in a second. For those who don't know IKEA Foundation, we actually support families in East Africa and in India to afford a better life while protecting the planet. So that's our focus. And as part of that work, we have a strong focus on green economic solutions and on looking at transforming agricultural livelihoods to ones that are based on regenerative and circular systems. So the majority of the people we target in our work are dependent on these livelihoods, right? And we support strong partners that contribute to accelerating the circular economy. And we do so at different levels. So we support global initiatives such as the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which was mentioned here before, of course, and many other organizations that may not be at first sight specialists in circular economy. So I want to highlight 3 examples of partners that we support just to illustrate how we work and how we see the added value of all the different types of partners. And the first example I want to put forward is the World Benchmarking Alliance. It's maybe sound very exciting, but it is a very exciting partner, and the work we are doing is super exciting. The Alliance envisions a society that values the success of businesses by what it contributes to the world. And they operate on a global level on 7 different systems transformations, and there are required 7 different transformations that they think are required to reach the SDGs. And we support them on one of them. We support them to develop the food and agriculture benchmark. And that's incentivized food system transformation. And based on science and industry research, they will benchmark 350 global keystone companies from across the entire food system and how they perform on different dimensions related to nutrition, to livelihood and environment. And actually, as we heard, Royal DSM is represented here on the panel is one of those 350 companies. So these companies have a global footprint, right? So they're so big that they can have the power to transform entire value chains. So by incorporating sustainable and circular production practices into the benchmark, looking at increased soil health and biodiversity, looking at using renewable energy, minimizing the food loss and waste, and moving to circular practices in packaging, we believe that they can be a key driver in transforming the food and agricultural sector into one that holds circular economy at its heart. So that was the first example. And my second example, Bonnie, is actually Aceli Africa. So I won't go deeply into that. It's not a usual suspect when it comes to driving the circular economy, but And what we like about it, we like a number of things about it, but we like the way they set up incentives, and specifically incentives that will increase interest for those who are willing to provide risk capital, and incentives that are related to food security and nutrition, to opportunities for women, and climate smart and resilient agriculture. So if you perform well on those incentives, you will do better. So at IKEA Foundation, we work together with SLE Africa to define the ESG criteria that determine whether lenders fulfill these higher impact standards. And SLE Africa explicitly look for companies that design for no waste and pollution, and companies that offer no, well, bioeconomy-based solutions. So in that way, they stimulate investments into small and medium circular food and agricultural enterprises. But next to stimulating corporates to change their way and shifting investors' attention to opportunities in the circular economy, we also want to build capacity on the ground and stimulate innovation on the ground. So that's why I bring up my third example, which is an organization called NVU. That's an organization experienced in building enterprises that address environmental and social challenges. So we support them with two programs, one in India and one in Kenya. And that's to create work opportunities for local communities by reusing and reducing waste streams. And if you look at what's happening in Kenya, the project supports what's something called the Food Flow Program. It's a program to build a zero food loss chain for fruits and vegetables and reduce post-harvest losses. On the other hand, in India, we look beyond the food and agriculture sector and support NVU's Reveal program. And that's a program to scale up ventures that work on recycling textile waste into handicrafts products and create jobs. So with NVU, we build circular entrepreneurships from the ground up and ensure that there's a capacity. So by supporting initiatives and partners that work on different levels and push different levers to accelerate the circular economy, we believe that we can have the strongest impact. Partnerships are needed across the board, bringing together civil society and investors, policymakers and companies, small and large. So we believe in that very strongly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were some fantastic examples. Dimitri, I want to shift back to you for a moment. You talked a little bit about, in your opening comments, about why partnerships are so important. Could you double down on that, double tap on that a bit for our audience?
Yeah, lovely to do that, Steve. I think we feel very strongly because we also went through a sort of a learning curve ourselves, and I think it's good to share that with the audience. And I would like to give an example predominantly around the resource and circularity space. I mean, I said nutrition and health, climate and energy, and resource and circularity as a third trend. And what we have seen and what we're advocating is that there is and there should be a price on waste. And certainly, if there will be a price on waste, that will incur partnerships. And I'm going to give you an example of a product which is more a concept, which we have developed in the carpet industry. And you would be surprised that the industry, who is second in terms of waste flows to either incineration or landfill, is carpets. The first one, I mean, any idea what the first one is? I will not let you guess in a digital world, but that is diapers. So diapers is number one, right? And then the second one is carpets. And we're not in diapers, but we had a sort of a concept to make carpets recyclable. And the issue is why partnership is so important is that carpet is a value chain with many steps in the value chain. And there are players who basically have no intent to reduce their waste because it's their current model. You need to work with designers because carpets have 11 different layers, a glue, a backsheet, a top coat, and they all being worked together. And the problem with the circularity around carpets is because all these 11 layers are different polymers and therefore very difficult to make circular. So what we have done is we went back to the value chain, completely to the back. And that means that we tried to design and redesign a carpet which was existing of one polymer, right? I mean, we're a bit of science-based company, and therefore we think in polymers, but in this case, it was a good idea. Because if you have one polymer and the whole carpet is made out of one polymer, one molecule category, then the recycling is 100 times easier because you just have a bunch of polymers captured in a carpet. But therefore, we needed to go through polymer suppliers to make them one polymer. We needed to go to the carpet manufacturers to explain that they should have 11 layers, but that they should have 11 layers based on one polymer. We should develop a glue, which was from the same polymer than where the carpet was made of. So we really went through all these steps in the value chain, and we've launched 2 years ago a product which was called Niaga. And Niaga is a full recyclable carpet. And after launch, me as co-CEO only found out later that if you reverse Niaga, it says again. It's again and again and again. I thought that was a nice marketing concept, that Niaga is again and again. But it's exactly the concept about reusing what you have. But we needed to work with raw material suppliers, we needed to work with designers, we needed to work with the current carpet manufacturers. And I'm very happy to say that we have started to close our first sales throughout the value chain, where we have developed machines, we have developed the glue, we had partnership with existing carpet producers, and we're now launching it via sort of an internet site. So it's working through the value chain, which makes partnership absolutely critical for success. And with that, back to you, Steve.
Dimitri, I think your comments around the partnership and the value chain are just really spot on, and I love the name Niaga. That's great. That's fantastic. Per, let me turn to you on this question about what, Dimitri's talked a little bit about partnerships and value chains and what makes for a success there. Coming from the philanthropic world, how do you look at them? Oh, you're on mute again.
Well, the circular economy is a complex animal, isn't it? It sort of connects all things and all beings. So, which I think is why working towards a circular economy requires a multi-stakeholder and cross-sectoral approach if we're going to be successful. So, moving beyond the current take and make and waste extractive industrial model, a circular economy aims to redefine growth and focusing on positive society-wide benefits. And this move from a linear system to a circular economy implies deep systemic transformation, and this requires the involvement of everyone, from large corporates that facilitate deep value chain collaboration to small innovative entrepreneurs that disrupt business as usual. It also requires the involvement of civil society and consumers, and facilitation by governments, and the commitment of investors and the financial world. So we believe philanthropy is an opportunity as well in this. We are committed to taking up our role and contribute by providing catalytic capital to initiatives and partners that grow the movement, and by using our convening power to bring together those frontrunners that together can really shift the system. So it's about system change, and we think we have a role to play there.
Over to you, Bob. USAID has been doing partnerships for a couple of decades, and I'd love to hear about how USAID thinks about partnerships and success in systems.
Steve, it's good to see you, Niaga. I touched on it earlier in my last answer, but partnering with local organizations and private enterprise is really the most effective way we've found at USAID to move the needle. We have an on-the-ground presence in most of the countries that are major contributors to the ocean plastics pollution problem, and our staff has long-standing and strong relationships with local organizations and governments. The innovative partnerships we forge with organizations that are large or small, local or multinational, are all catalytic, targeted, and strategic to make a sustainable impact. In fact, at the end of 2018, USAID launched its first ever private sector engagement policy. This is the foundation for responding to new market realities and building an equitable and resilient future across all countries where we work. So it's through partnerships, especially with the private sector, that we can leverage each other's unique skill sets and strengths, and then we can tackle problems together that could not be addressed on our own. as I said, we're all looking for scale and sustainability to address effectively the most difficult development challenges that the world faces today. And to get there, partnerships are not only important, they're completely necessary for us.
Thank you for that, Bonnie. And I think that essential comment that partnerships are necessary really encapsulates a lot of, I think, what we're hearing today. I want to jump back to you and give you a few minutes to talk about, what do you think are the criteria that make partnerships work? And maybe even speak to some of the challenges you found. The advantage to being a foundation sometimes is you get a bit of a bird's eye view. And so would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Happy to. I mean, I believe it's extremely important to start with the values. We come out of a very value-based culture at IKEA, and the values underpin not only what IKEA does, but also what the foundation does. And making sure partners are aligned on values and have a common understanding is, in my view, the basis for success. Then we need to speak the same language, and we need to apply a huge amount of respect and tolerance for differences in culture, in mindset, and in perspective. Without that, it doesn't work. So through our grant making, we have learned that in order to create a lasting impact, we need to actively seek ways to engage in dialogue and collaboration with the local organizations and the communities we're trying to help. And we partner with leading global and regional initiatives, but we also try to keep the many people at the center of our attention. We always talk about the many people as part of our vision, create a better everyday life for the many people, and we keep the many people in focus all the time. So we are committed to amplifying the voices of our partners and our local communities to ensure a fair and inclusive and balanced debate around each of these areas where we operate. So we really believe in long-term commitment. We believe in building long-term transparent relationships that fosters mutual trust. Trust takes time to build. It requires time. Transition to a circular economy or to a regenerative food and agriculture system is not going to happen overnight. We know that. And it will not be a smooth transition, as we do know all the answers up front. We don't know all the answers up front. Long-term commitments does not mean, though, that we can push things on the long-term planning agenda, because we are running out of time. So we need to act now, and we need to stay action-focused all the time. We have to work with a joint vision and with shared aspirations, even though we know that we don't know exactly how things is going to pan out. We just need to take a leap of faith, which is what they do at IKEA all the time to be successful. And that's why transparency is key. We need to work together in the spirit of dialogue and flexibility and trust. Togetherness is at the heart of the IKEA culture, and we are strongest when we all work together and we pull in the same directions. So basically, we need to be massively optimistic that it's possible to change the system for people and planet to thrive together.
Thank you, Per. Dimitri, I want to turn to you for a moment. As you built these partnerships in the value chain, in the Niaga value chain, trust and transparency must have been a real challenge, because you're dealing with firms that probably also in some ways competed with one another. How did DSM overcome that?
Yeah, hi, Steve. Yeah, that is an absolutely key question. And we basically have a sort of a 3C model if we look at partnership. And the 3C stand for courageous, it stands for caring, and it stands for collaboration. And if it's 2 out of 3, the partnership will fail. It should all 3. So let's start with courageous. And I think building on what Per said, it's exactly music in my ear, because it's sanity checking on what we do on the 3 Cs. If you are not courageous in building a dream together to do something which is a bit out of boundary for the partnership. If you do incremental stuff in partnership, it will fail, because then self-interest will prevail. So you need to have a sort of a common dream where lots of people will say, are you crazy? This is impossible. Then partnership thrives, because then basically together you can make it work. So I would call this courageous dream, vision, common goals is one. Secondly, the caring part. And there trust and transparency come in. And we call that in our business, if you don't have an open book relationship, partnership is not going to fly if you want to change the value chain. If you basically only sharing part of the information because you want to withhold a bit of the benefits yourself, it's going to fail. Because if everybody does that 10 times benefits needs to be shared to make it work. So for us, the caring part has to do with care about each other and therefore be extremely transparent, which I have to say within DSM, we also made our mistakes because people were already commercially thinking on their bit in the whole value chain. If that's the case, it's a recipe for failure. The third one is collaboration. If one partner is benefiting more than the other, it will fail over time. Maybe in the beginning, it's good enough to get a kick started, but if the one is benefiting more, it will not work. So you need to have this transparency, you need to have this dream together, and it needs to benefit partners on the short and the long run. And with that, back to you, Steve.
No, I love the 3 C's: courageous, caring, and collaboration. I think that's that's such a great way of encapsulating, I think, what has to drive these types of partnerships, especially when you have competing interests. Bonnie, I give you just an opportunity to comment as well. USAID, operates in 80 countries. How do you tackle some of these 3 C's across such a vast portfolio?
So, Steve, this is a really important question to unpack because for us, thoughtful and strategic partnerships are integral to achieving results. And thankfully, USAID has a long history of working with all kinds of partners, and we've learned quite a bit from these experiences. Through over 2,300 global development alliances and other partnerships, we have leveraged over $43 billion in non-US government funds that address important development needs. From our point of view, a successful partnership results when our private sector partners realize a clear commercial benefit from engagement with us, and that commercial benefit supports a clear development impact that we care about. The examples that I referenced earlier demonstrate these types of successes through this shared value approach. Through that, we can achieve sustainability and scaled impact. But most importantly, measuring impact, adapting, and learning from past partnerships is the key to success. In a new study that USAID is due to release very soon, we analyzed partnerships 2 or more years after USAID funding ended. We found out that partnerships that use market-oriented approaches are more impactful and sustainable than those that don't. Market-oriented partnerships have results that are more likely to be sustainable because they establish links to markets and new customer bases. The case is strong for USAID and other donors. Partnerships with the private sector brought sustainable results and foster self-reliance. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that all successful partnerships need to have shared ethics and values, which for us includes upholding responsible business practices, environmental protection, and respect for human rights. The U.S. Department of State and USAID recently launched the COVID-19 Private Sector Engagement and Partnership Fund to strengthen the efforts of the private sector and to bolster our ongoing response efforts, helping the world's most vulnerable people overcome the devastation that's been inflicted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll have a little bit of a commercial here and say that I encourage firms to apply to the fund with their innovative ideas, because it's through those that we'll be able to continue to make a difference.
Bonnie, thank you so much. It sounds like there's an opportunity on the table for those listening in. Bonnie, Per, Dimitri, I want to thank you all for your time today. This has been just a fantastic conversation, and I'm going to turn it over very quickly back to David, and who's going to take us through the next phase of our discussion today.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you all for and your continued commitments to raise the bar for us all. Just to bring in a couple of comments from the audience. There's been some comments going on around innovation and the role of innovators and disruptors, as well as individuals and their role in partnerships. And just a couple of reflections from our engagements with a lot of CEOs and ministers and how they're thinking about that. One is on the innovation side, what I found really interesting in the last year was how many CEOs we meet with who talk about circular economy as an innovation opportunity and an employee engagement opportunity. So they're finding their employees are excited because this is something new, it's bold, it's ambitious, and kind of being able to create some energy around, even with parts of their company that might not necessarily always be part of the cutting edge of the business. So I think that's one. I'd say another thing, a characteristic that I think unites a lot of the companies we end up working with who are larger and tend to be a bit older companies, is that they are ones that are willing to transform. And I think DSM is a good example of that kind of continual transformation of the business to not just keep up, but to stay ahead and kind of have a pull factor within their industries or kind of move into new markets. And so innovators for them are looking at new technologies, they're looking at integration and acquiring. There's a lot more work in corporate venture arms investing in innovators now. Even you're seeing that with some of the real kind of petrochemical companies and others. And of course, there's market disruption. I don't know of any of the CEOs who are really working on circular economy who are afraid of innovation. They kind of want the disruption and then they want to get there first and kind of win on their capabilities to deliver. And the final comment a little bit on the individuals is some of the things that we've been thinking about are really individuals on three levels. There's individuals as leaders. We talk about that a lot. We're a platform of CEOs and ministers, but there's local leadership as well. And so in the partnership realm especially, there is the global leader who can set an ambition and a vision and keep the drumbeat moving on a project. And certainly in circular economy, you need that, but you need the local leader to contextualize and to drive home the value and the results. The second is on actually design and feedback. So in a good program, I come from a development background and working in innovation and technology, you need both human-centered design along with feedback loops to make sure that the innovations you're introducing are continually improved over time. And I usually would say, if you have an original idea and it seems innovative, if it looks the same within a year, it wasn't innovative or it should fail. And that's where individuals come in. And the third is consumers. And I would say this actually to flip the paradigm a little bit to say, I think sometimes I hear a false narrative that we need to put the burden of transformation on individual consumers. And I think we do have a role to play. I have a role to play in my own life, but we also need to look at individuals in their capacity as workers at government who are looking at government procurement in roles in companies. So really thinking of the multiplicity of what our roles are as individuals is really critical. And so with those comments are from the audience, I want to now turn it back to Vera and Tim in the studio to take us to the next part of the event.
Thank you very much, David. And thank you also to Steve and the wonderful panelists. And we'll be returning to David soon, but before going on to the second panel discussion, we will hear from one of the circular solutions that Citra has identified on the hunt for the winning recipe. Based on these, we see that partnering does play a key role on scaling the circular solutions. We also see the importance of early ecosystems integration and collaboration with locally well-known organizations. We will now see a video of Blend Hub's food as a service platform that lets local food producers create smarter local production and distribution of food.
Blend Hub is deploying the world's first multi-localized network of food production hubs, controlled by a unique cloud-based digitized food quality software, Chemometric Brain, making it possible to produce safer and cheaper food products anywhere in the world. future of everything is platform-based, and food platforms is an excellent opportunity to collaborate between people and industries, creating value for each other and for final consumers. Food industry is highly fragmented and will benefit from platform collaboration. Please demand from your food suppliers to adapt to locally produced and digitized supply chains. Using accurate and neutral data will enable all of us to make better decisions and make sure and fast-track the understanding of what we put into our mouth.
And now we will pace back to David, who has more in store for us. And sorry, David, we couldn't help ourselves.
I think the fact these videos and the music and the event has this feel, I think we should all thank Ministers Wilkinson and Van Veldhoven, along with Jyrki at Citra, for really turning lemons into lemonade with the WCEF this year, and bringing us 3 events with the online version, the event coming in April in the Netherlands, as well as the event next year in Canada. So thank you for that. To follow the discussions, we're going to be joined by Dr. Naoko Ishii, but first we're going to hear reflections from Lisa Jackson, who is the former head of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and now Apple's Vice President of Environment Policy and Social Initiatives. And we're also blessed to have both Naoko and Lisa on the board of PACE. So I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with board members as well. So now over to Lisa, please.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to join you. And thank you to PACE for all you are doing to advance the changes we know are needed to build a safer and healthier future. I don't think anyone could have anticipated the year we've had so far. The recent wildfires in our backyard here in California are just one of many humbling reminders of the urgent implications of the climate crisis on our daily lives. These issues have sadly been a reality for so many across the globe for far too long. That's why the first of Apple's 3 environmental priorities is addressing climate change. We started with transitioning our own operations to 100% renewable energy, a goal we were proud to meet in 2018. And now we're embarking on an ambitious commitment to achieve carbon neutrality for our entire footprint, including our supply chain and product life cycle, all by 2030. We're confident in our ability to meet this goal because of our track record of progress. In fact, we're already carbon neutral for our corporate emissions, sourcing 100% renewable electricity at all of our offices, retail stores, and data centers across 43 countries. But our investments in clean energy do far more than just help us meet our goals. They also deliver breakthrough innovations that bring clean energy and good jobs to businesses and local communities. Our recent announcement of several new renewable energy projects in Europe are great examples of this. They include the largest onshore wind turbines in Denmark and one of the largest solar farms in Scandinavia built without public subsidies. We'll continue to pioneer these types of investments to help us maintain 100% renewable energy even as we grow as a business. At the same time, we are hard at work helping our vast and complex supply chain to transition to clean energy. Since 2015, we've been working through our supplier clean energy program to transition all of the electricity used in our manufacturing supply chain to 100% renewable energy, including working with our suppliers in Europe. We're proud to now have 72 suppliers committed to using 100% renewable electricity for their Apple production. This includes companies like Germany-based suppliers Varta, Henkel, and Tessa SE, DSM Engineering Materials based in the Netherlands, ST Microelectronics based in Switzerland, and Solvay based in Belgium. And companies like Solvay are now expanding their use of renewable energy to their broader operations. These commitments will play an integral role in helping us to meet our 2030 commitment. But to get to the finish line, we will also need to think about the resources we use to make our products. 3 years ago, we announced the groundbreaking pledge to one day make our products using only recycled or renewable materials. Progress in this area will have a profound impact on our commitment to carbon neutrality. In short, we're working to transform the linear supply chain model, instead building a circular model that aims to eliminate our reliance on mining. We started this journey by conducting a robust, data-driven analysis of the impacts of 45 different elements and raw materials used in our products. The resulting material impact profiles helped us identify a list of 14 priority materials to tackle as the first phase of our efforts. These 14 materials make up nearly 90% of the total mass shipped by Apple in 2019. Let's take aluminum as an example. Back in 2015, aluminum represented 27% of our manufacturing emissions, the largest single source. We started by working with our procurement teams and prioritizing the use of aluminum that was smelted using hydroelectricity rather than fossil fuels like coal. Partnering with 2 of our aluminum suppliers and the governments of Canada and Quebec, we helped to accelerate the development of patented technology that eliminates direct greenhouse gas emissions from the carbon-intensive aluminum smelting process. In December 2019, we announced Apple had bought the first ever commercial batch of direct carbon-free aluminum, which is currently under development on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And just a few weeks ago, we were excited to release our latest products, which, among other amazing features, contain more recycled material than ever before, including 100% recycled tungsten and a 100% recycled aluminum case for our new Apple Watch models. Our new iPads also contain 100% recycled aluminum enclosures and rare earth elements in the audio magnets. These devices, like every Apple product, are built to last, often going on to second and third users. And when devices do reach end of life, we've developed innovative solutions to retrieve their materials and ensure they can be reused. Like our robot Daisy, which can disassemble up to 1.2 million iPhone devices a year, and her new teammate Dave, which disassembles the Taptic engine from iPhone to better recover rare earth magnets. We've begun deploying Dave robots so that our specialty recyclers can recover these materials along with other key materials like tungsten and steel. As with everything we do, we're developing solutions not just to address our own products, but to push our industry forward. Our state-of-the-art material recovery lab is the headquarters for much of this work. Here we are researching innovative solutions involving robotics and machine learning to improve on traditional recycling methods like targeted disassembly, sorting, and shredding. These efforts, coupled with our clean energy investments and emission reductions, have already led to a 35% reduction in Apple's carbon footprint since 2015, and they put us on a trajectory to meet our new 2030 commitment. We are sharing all of our progress and our path to 2030 at apple.com/environment and in our 2020 Environmental Progress Report. Because meeting our goals means transparency in our process and sharing our methods with others in our industry. The challenges we face are far too great for one company or organization to solve alone. True, far-reaching progress means collaboration with our industry peers, organizations like PACE, academia, manufacturers, logistics companies, and governments to address the barriers we face in these efforts. Together, we can partner to ensure the level playing field that is necessary to scale circular supply chains and find new and innovative solutions that are right for people and the planet. Thank you all for your partnership in this vital work.
And thank you, Lisa. Those were some incredible remarks about how Apple is trying to push forward in the circular economy. And that's a theme we want to explore in this final session today is where do we go from here? How do we use partnerships to drive systems change? And I'm very pleased to introduce today Naoko Ishii. She is the director at the Center for Global Commons, professor at the Institute for Future Initiatives. She also previously served as the CEO of the Global Environmental Facility, and she is a former Vice Deputy Minister for Finance of Japan. Naoko, I'd like to turn the floor over to you to get your thoughts on partnerships and systems change.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'm so excited to be to join you, and I'm just listening to my history from Ministry of Finance Japan to Global Environment Facility, and now the Center for Global Commons at the Tokyo University. It's just kind of reflected. I'm reflecting my own journey and then my journey with global commons, but also with circular economy, which is indispensable, a very, very important principle to global commons. All key speakers today are Janez and then everyone actually that emphasize the importance that we need to recognize that we are at a very critical juncture of human history, our relationship with the Earth system, that we were in environmental crisis, we were pushing too much of the capacity or limitation of the Earth system, and we are almost slowing out of the planetary boundaries. Maybe we have already exceeded some of them. So it's so critical to think about how we can continue to prosper within planetary boundaries and what kind of future we want in 2050. It actually gives me two important thoughts or the ideas. One, as this session emphasized, we need to transform our way of life. That then circular economy is one cross-cutting thing, but we need to think about how we want to change the way we build cities, how we want to change our food system, what to eat and how to produce them, how to not to waste them. We need to think about how to get the energy. So energy transition is important. So that it's all related to the way of life, which is actually putting so much of the pressure on the Earth capacity or Earth system. And that's why circular economy, it's so critical as a underpinning or cross-cutting principle for transforming our way of life. So that's actually one of the reasons I was so passionate to promote the circular economy while I was with the Global Environment Facility, which opened my eyes to that challenge we are facing. But also it gives me quite an important lesson that what kind of governance mechanism we should have to steward global commons. I think that some previous speakers mentioned a little bit about what kind of collaboration, what kind of multilateralism we need. But just working for the Global Environment Facility for 8 years, I actually have to say that we really need a new way of governing global commons. Global commons, in my terminology, it's a global environmental commons. It's important Earth system, which that globally owned by everybody, but nobody is really responsible. So that unless we find a good governing mechanism, that the global commons be exploited, and that's why we have a climate change problem. That's why we have a biodiversity loss. That's why we have an ocean acidification or marine plastic issues. So we need to find some way to govern and nurture the global commons, and the circular economy principle is a very important thinking that the principle behind all of those transformation of the system, and also to think about what kind of global mechanism to govern those commons. Many of previous speakers talk about multi-stakeholder coalition or multi-stakeholder partnership, because everybody by now does understand none of each company or country or just the citizens can really transform the entire economic system. That's why we need this multi-stakeholder coalition and uniting policymakers, both national and local, then the business and the sector, CSOs, academia, but most importantly, maybe citizens. I'm glad that David mentioned a little bit about the importance of the citizens or the individuals. I think that we need to really find a way to how to involve the citizens as a very important player to transform the key economic system. They can make a very important decision as a consumer, but also investors, so that then whatever global governance mechanism that we need to think about, we need to find a way to involve them. Another reason I really think the circular economy is so important is it actually unites everybody's ambition or desire or the goal in one of those, in this one single principle. It is extremely clear that it gives quite a big solution to that challenge and we are facing in terms of global environmental crisis, because it's trying to address the root cause of the problem. So it's no surprising thing. But one estimate said that if we do the circularity to the maximum, it actually reduced that GHG emission by 40-45%. It actually addressed the scarcity of the resources, and it actually addressed that how the city be built and how that food system be rebuilt, and actually that it provides the competitiveness, longer term competitiveness involving the citizens, so that it really addresses those multiple challenges we are facing, and then that it provides a good solution to work for. But it only works with partnership. I'm glad that I learned that now 3 C's today, and this really is very well said. It kind of captures all key ingredients and the components in it. So that with that, I really would like to continue to promote the global commons, actually, with the circularity in principle. But I think that the circular economy is a kind of instrument. To me, the ultimate goal of the circular economy or promoting circularity is to how to safeguard or how to nurture the global commons. Because why circular economy is needed? Because we are pushing so much of the pressure on that global earth system, and we need to find a solution to address that. Circular economy is definitely one of those solutions. So back to studio. Thank you.
Naoko, thank you so much for those comments. I want to follow up just very briefly with the limited time we have, and just ask you, if you were to give advice based on, you've worked at the national level, the global level, if you were to give advice to leaders in their communities about one thing they could do to start to move this forward and to start connecting citizens to circular economy, what would it be?
Leaders, you mean that the leaders, be it it's a policymaker or the private sector or anybody? Anybody. I think that's the key, because then actually that then each of the partners, as somebody mentioned, that is actually addressing slightly different, and is the same goal, but in a different setup. I'm now back from Global Environment Facility, who's where most of the counterparts are enlightened business people or enlightened political leadership. Now back in Japan, the challenge is more like a little bit ambiguity of the national goal, and that our GHG emission goal is still very loose, or actually it's not too ambitious. So lack of that kind of political leadership, it's extremely difficult for the enlightened business to take a very aggressive or ambitious longer term strategy. So in this case, I think that the coalition really needs a political leadership which give them a clear longer term vision, so that they can put an R&D at the very right place. Somebody already mentioned the innovation. The circular economy actually creates the opportunity for innovation. So that is actually a very, very important point. So that depending on the which sector, which country, which setting you are in, I think that we need to find a way to what are the bit of missing pieces and try to find a way to how to fill that gap. In case of Japan, it's a little bit a longer term political leadership. And if that is given, I think the business leader, the CSO, the citizens have to fill that void. We just can't stay and lay back and just blaming lack of something. That we just need to create actually the additional layer that an input to how to actually substitute or not fill that void. And I think by having this kind of global conversation, it's entirely possible. Thank you.
Yeah, Yoko, that, I think you just summed it so well. And I want to hand it over to David to give a few summarizing remarks and reflections on this session. But want to thank you for your time and for your insights.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. It's interesting in this discussion. I'm real time reflecting that from the fields of Kenya to multilateral mechanisms, I heard three common elements that we need here. That we have the 3 C's, but also we need the combination of bold leaders who set targets and take tangible action. We've heard that from what the Dutch government's done, what the European Union's doing, what Apple and DSM are doing. They have that combination there. And then I think through foresighting, if we consider innovation and disruption and are vigilant about new forms of collaboration and multilateralism, the new world that we want to see can become reality. So I want to thank you all today for the discussion and your contributions. Your leadership's needed now more than ever, and I mean everybody who's in this call, listening, participating. If you ever wanted an opportunity to do good in the world, I think we have it in front of us. And now over to you, Vera and Tim, to share a few final ideas from Citra's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for a set of really intriguing conversations. And I wanted to do a wrap up here, but I think you've covered it really neatly. So I want just to take the chance to see, do we see in the chat box already any partnerships forming there?
Well, I certainly hope so. And this is what the forum really is for, is the partnering and the tremendous opportunities when you gather the sort of the circular economy brains of the world in the same space. But what I find striking is that some of the most unlikely partnerships can provide the most effective results. I mean, that was certainly one of the things that we heard from these fantastic speakers.
Absolutely. And the circular economy is a complex animal, as we learned
Yes,
today.
absolutely. And thus providing huge opportunities.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
And no pressure, but I think this forum has been a bit of a hub for partnerships. So it's, we can look north, south, east, west, and the more than 70 side events that take place throughout the year, I think, are an example of just that. And many of these can be traced back to previous forums as well. And I want to mention here the Nordic Circular Hotspot. And most recently, we're really excited about Citra and the Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs collaboration with the African Development Bank. And this should also be said of, the same could be said of CELC, the Circular Economy Leadership Coalition, which you may remember from the third section that I encourage you to check out. You can check out all the sessions for another 2 weeks. So if you missed anything, do check it out. And also, of course, I think we have to mention the widening of our host network with Canada and the Netherlands are also an example of this. And yeah, I think now we want you to help us have something to brag about next year. So do get busy in the chat box, and yeah.
And let's produce some results.
Yes, that's why we're here.
Absolutely. So we're going to be taking, after this fantastic session, a little break again, and we'll be back in about an hour and a half. And what's happening next, Tim?
Well, I think we'll try to close the loop and tie the bag in the final session, where we look at the role of finance and policy like we did in the first session. So do join us again in just 1 hour and 41 minutes exactly.
Thank you.